Hi everybody, I'm Jazz Tankay, Senior Artisans Editor at Variety. I don't know how you're all doing today, but I am so excited and thrilled to be here to talk about the Mare of Easttown finale, which aired on Sunday in the US and on Monday around the world. And in a moment, we are going to be joined by Mare herself, Kate Winslet, so I will be looking for her in the chat. And thank you to everybody who is tuning in. Let me just go in there. All right, Kate, I'm going to send you a request to join the chat. Hi, Kate.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can. Hello from... Hello.
My AirPods aren't working, so I'm just going to take them out.
All right.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, can you hear me? We good?
Yes, we're good. We're good. We're good.
The joys of tech.
I've just realized that my hair, I was like, oh my God, I've got to go live on Instagram. I've never done this in my life. So I quickly washed my hair, and so I'm afraid it's partly still wet, but never mind. It's in keeping with Mare, isn't it? It's in keeping with the girl.
This is exactly what Mare would do, right? She'd just rock up to an IG live with damp hair and...
No, she wouldn't even know what it was. She would be like, you know, she'd be like more prepared to wait in line at Wawa just to get fed. So I think so. But thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for doing this, and thank you to everybody tuning in. And I don't know how everybody else is doing, but I'm still reeling from that finale because it was so amazing. And to everybody tuning in, we are going to be taking questions, but I just want to ask you, what is it like now that the final episode is out there? People have had their reactions. Have you been tuning into any of the social media chatter out there?
I haven't been, not really, no, I haven't been tuning into social media chatter. My two teenagers are like, you know, they're just like howling with laughter and raptures of glee at things that are going on Twitter. So that's been quite fun. Listen, I just feel such an amazing feeling of kind of relief. It's almost like letting go of a gigantic tsunami from inside of ourselves, all of us collectively, the creative team that put this show together, because we've been holding on to the secret that it was Ryan. Even as I say that now, I'm like, oh my God, can I really say this out loud? You know, we've been holding on to that for a very long time. I mean, I first read episode 7 back in June 2018, and I didn't even tell my teenagers, who are now 17 and 20. I've even kept it from them, and I normally share everything with them about my job. So it is a remarkable feeling, as well as you know, it feels sad. It feels very sad. It was a huge part of my life for a very long time, and now it's sort of a very big part of other people's. Clearly, the way the audiences have responded has been totally overwhelming.
Oh my gosh. So wait, you knew that it was Ryan going all the way back to, you know, going all the way back a few years. I mean, what was that like knowing that it was him and knowing the audiences were consuming this on a weekly basis? Oh, Kate, have we lost you? Welcome to the internet, the joys of internet connections. She'll be back in a moment, or we'll unfreeze. We'll give her a moment. So for those tuning in, oh, we've lost her. Let me just request her again. So for those tuning in, we are talking about the finale of
Hi, we're back.
Easttown.
We're back. So I lost you roundabout way back in 2018. I've known since June 2018.
Yes. What was that like for you to have that burden as the series was unfolding weekly?
Well, it was quite surreal, because even on our crew, like not all of the crew even knew what the ending was of our show. Not everyone gets to read all of the scripts, and so So even our first assistant director, who is the person responsible for putting together our schedule, she was even cryptic with the scene description. So for example, when we filmed me finding the gun in the shed and Mr. Carroll says, you know, I say, who cuts the lawn? And he says, Ryan Ross. Even that moment, it was described differently on our schedule so that our immediate crew wouldn't know. And when we have the conversation with Ryan, the big interrogation back at the police station, I remember that being described very sort of cryptically as well. So it was a huge amount of pressure. I've never had something like that. I've never been part of something where the huge reveal, that great big twist, is so important. And I was just terrified someone was going to let it slip. You know, even in rehearsal, like sometimes we would go to the locations before we started shooting and just check out geographically, you know, how scenes were going to pan out. And we would often have, like, you know, just security standing in the street to make sure our equipment was taken care of and what have you. And I would have to remind our creative team, I'd be like, shh, don't, you're saying it out loud, don't say Ryan. You know, we would just have, you know, people coming to help for the day, and I'd be so worried about that. So it was a lot of pressure, I'll be honest. It was a lot of pressure trying to keep that a secret. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I want to talk about the walk up to the house, because that was such a devastating moment. So much of the show is about, you know, mothers protecting their children at all costs, and just the length that they will go to. And we see that walk, and then there's that incredible shot of Julianne Nicholson and Cameron Mann, who, you know, holding one another as you stand in the background. Talk about filming that sequence.
You know, I'll be completely honest. We were so focused on Cameron and making sure that, like, emotionally he was okay and ready, which he was, by the way. And I was kind of worried about Julianne because she's my friend. I've known her for a very long time. And fun side note, her husband is my son Joe's godfather. This is an interesting side note. So we have this personal history. I held her son, her biological son, Iggy. I actually held him in my arms before he was even 24 hours old, 13 years ago. And so we had this kind of emotional canvas that was already within us coming to playing these characters. So I felt instinctively worried about her because I knew how painful that scene with her and Ryan inside of the house was for her and was going to be. So I think allowed myself to go into the real emotion of that moment. You know, we'd already been filming at that point for several months, I think 2.5, 3 months. So we were very embedded in these characters by that point and in our story. And I just tried to stay as quiet as I could. I remember there was a lot going on, a lot of moving of equipment. We had all of those cars. And actually, I think we were losing the light as well, which is often a huge pressure. It just felt like I don't know, it was like a slow and painful car crash. And I just had to stay in the moment. You know, sometimes as an actor, there are lots and lots of things that can distract you. And actually learning to quiet those distractions is something that can take a lifetime. I've been doing this job nearly 30 years, and I'm shocked by how easily distracted we can all become. And so a lot of my concentration was just on really shutting all of that noise out and just staring through that window. And I could see Julianne and Cameron. I could see them through the window. We made sure that I had a clear eye line to them. And so off camera, for me, they were absolutely acting the scene together. I could see their embrace. I could see him sit on her lap. I'd see all of it. So I was able to react to that in hopefully, you know, an honest way. But it was pretty painful. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And Cameron is superb. You mentioned the interrogation room sequence. I mean, what was that like working with him? And
you know, I have to tell you, every time I work with a young person, I am always so blown away by the concentration and the desire to learn and to listen, the willingness to be open to tips and tricks and suggestions, and the warmth and the very gentle quality that Cameron possesses really lent itself to the playing of this part, because that to me is one of the saddest things about Mare of Easttown, is that this could happen to anyone, right? He's just a good kid who made one incredibly bad decision that will alter the path of his life forever. And I think that's why people have reacted so emotionally to this, is that it could happen to any one of us and any one of our children. And he took all of that on with incredible humility and composure and grace. He was really concerned to make sure that he knew all of his lines for that interrogation scene. And actually, we filmed that scene after COVID. So just to give you a little bit of timing context, because it's always so strange for people to, I don't know, hear what really went on behind the scenes, and maybe fun, I don't know. But so when we filmed the scene of me walking up to the house and him running and saying, "Mom, it's Mare, she knows, she knows," that was shot maybe back in, like, I want to say February of last year, 2020. And the scene when we then interrogate him in the police station was filmed in November, just gone. So after COVID. And the scene when I put him in the car after that interview and I say, these officers are going to take you to the facility now, and once you get settled, you know, you'll have a chance to call your mum and your sister. Actually, that piece of dialogue was written for me 5 minutes before we even shot that scene. And the writer came up to me and he was like, you know, I really think we should have some words here. It feels weird that you like silently put him into the car. So I swear to God, almost like on the back of someone's cigarette packet, he quickly wrote this dialogue. And I'm like, oh, okay, just get to quickly learned it, ran in and did it. But that scene when I put Ryan into the car, that was the first scene that he and I shot together of the entire show. And that was filmed in November 2019.
Wow.
It's so crazy. And the scene with Julianne and myself in her car, when she's really breaking down and screaming at me, that was our first scene together back in 2019. It's like crazy. And that's where our shared history and the fact that we actually have known each other for a long time and we have this connection by way of our families, that was where we were very, very fortunate, because we had this history that we could lean on. I mean, otherwise, I think it would have been almost impossible.
That is wild. I think so many people don't realize that often with TV shows and movies, not everything is shot in chronological order. So
no. And I tell you, it's really funny because in preparation for talking to you now and knowing that a lot of people would be tuning in and the adrenaline of this moment, I was like, God, I want to be able to tell them some interesting things. And I looked at it's called a one-line schedule, where you see the scene description literally on one line, and it goes day after day after day, and you start to film your show. In our first week of our show, week one, and we had like our 126-day shoot. We filmed, just listen to this, everyone. We filmed everything across the entire show at Mr. and Mrs. Carroll's house in week one. So when I filmed seeing Ryan on that console go into the shed and get the gun, that was day 4 of our shoot, and I hadn't even met Cameron. And another thing I remembered, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe the filmmakers did that to me. I was like, God damn it. And so, but then another thing that I remembered is that the director wanted to come very, very close on my face, which is the shot that has ended up in the show. And in order to get the camera physically close enough to my face, they had to move the console out of the way, which, by the way, the console was blank anyway. The footage was added later with special effects. So I was staring at a blank screen. But when I had to react to seeing Ryan, they had to move the console because it was in the way of the camera. And I was staring at a piece of orange tape stuck on the wall. I was like, God, this is like, sometimes an actor's job is so wild that the improvising in the last minute, like, you just, yeah. But I luckily for me, I'd created a backstory, and I'd really had prepared to play the role across the whole show, so I could tap into my triggers and my stuff that I'd set up for that scene. But my God, it was crazy, and we shot it in like 5 minutes because the day was ending, but it's just wild, that stuff.
oh my gosh, all the secrets are coming out now, Kate. I love it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure our audience does too. But you got to live with Mare for so long, like, you know, with TV, that I think that's one of the luxuries that actors have. Talk about living with her for I guess years in this case, as opposed to months or days. Like, what was that like
I
too?
definitely had, I think, I don't know, for me as an actor, like one of the ways in which I kind of cope with this job, because I love it, I really love it, but I also sometimes hate it and it hurts sometimes. And, sometimes, you have to kind of go to these quite strange, painful places that ordinarily in, your own life, you might never have to visit that space. And so it was hard. Like, honestly, it was really hard. And, some people will often say to me, so how do you chill out, at the end of the day? And like, how do you, do you go home and just leave it all behind? And what do you do to relax? And I'm like, I'm always like, relax? I don't, I definitely didn't relax playing Mesh here. Not at all. Like even at weekends, I'd find it really hard to switch off. And I would try and like cooking. I love to cook, and I would try and really cook a lot at the weekend. Like somehow the process of like, I don't know, chopping onions or like shredding carrots, like there was something about I don't know, the repetition of creating something different by way of food. That sort of would calm me a little bit. But it was hard, it was complicated, and I did feel that I had to like be everyone's cheerleader as well, because when you're cast number one, when you're playing the lead of the title role, as it was in this case, you want everyone to know that you're in the same boat as them, and also you want everyone to feel included and safe, and you don't want anyone to feel afraid. You want to maximize confidence levels, especially with younger actors, because for me, I remember when I was younger, and if I felt confident, I felt I could do better work. So for me, it was also about making sure that everyone felt that they were in a space where they could excel in the roles that they were playing, and to nail it every day, and they did. I mean, we were just so fortunate with our incredible cast. I mean, aren't they amazing? All those wonderful
Oh
young
my
actors.
gosh. Well,
Yeah.
that leads me to one of the questions that we have from Nolan, who wants to know, what was it like acting alongside Jean Smart, and what was your favorite scene to do with her?
Jean and I became very close. I mean, I have to say, like the chemistry that you see is really the chemistry that we had, and we would play around, we would improvise. I mean, honestly, I would throw food at her and she would throw food back at me, like honestly. um but also, family relationships, as most of us know, they aren't always straightforward, and I know that I'm from a very, very big family, and Jean the same. And so we were definitely able to draw on, I think, some of our own experiences of just like rowdy, crazy family life. But it was wonderful working with her. I mean, we just got along so well, and she was able to be very spontaneous. We would change our dialogue a lot last minute. We would add things and experiment and try something else. And it's a real privilege to work with someone like that, because not all actors are like that. Some actors are like, no, please don't change a word that I'm saying, because I need that to keep me grounded, and that's absolutely fine. But for Jean and I, we were able to do a little bit of both, and yeah, it was a huge amount of fun, and I love that there are these three generations of women all living under the same roof, and how complicated that is, and having two matriarchs. Oof, oof.
What a
That's a
dynamic.
tricky one. That's definitely a tricky one.
That was a great dynamic. What was the most challenging scene for you to shoot?
Um, there were a lot. Like often making a movie, there might be one, maybe two scenes as an actor that you either like look forward to or dread, because of how emotionally taxing or powerful they might be. And for me in Mare, I feel like there were several of those in every episode. Um, I think the most challenging scene for me, really, well, almost anything where I had to talk about Kevin, because I had created so much guilt and trauma around what has happened to Kevin. And the actor Cody Costro, who actually plays Kevin, I I couldn't look him in the eye. I couldn't stand near him when he was at work. I had to go, I can't. I'd have to put myself in a different room. It was quite weird. And I have to say, I've never kind of gone that deeply into an aspect of a character that just seeing the other actor would sort of trigger something. very strange, and I almost can't really properly explain it. So I think the hardest scene, if I was really to pick one, was probably the scene in episode 6 at the therapist's office when she talks through what happened the day that Kevin died. It's actually even quite hard for me to say this now. I found that very hard because my whole body was screaming, collapse, release it all. You know, it's so upsetting to describe. But of course, that's not what Mare would have done. Mare would have tried to hold it all back and hold it all back as much as she could, because if she released everything, she would have completely fallen apart. And that's what she has resisted and stubbornly refused to do since the day that he died. And of course, that's affected her and everyone around her. So for me, that was definitely the hardest scene, for sure.
Yeah. And then talking about Kevin, I mean, that final clip of her going up into the attic, oh my gosh, that was beyond heartbreaking. Did you shoot anything else beyond that scene? Like, is there something on the cutting room floor? And like, did you feel like she got closure beyond that by going up there and finally, I guess, facing everything that she'd been avoiding up to that point?
We didn't shoot anything after that. That was always the end of the show. But we did toy with whether or not we would keep it. This is a reveal, I guess I'm saying now. So because Mare and Laurie collapsing on the kitchen floor at Laurie's house, that is such a powerful moment that Brad Ingelsby and Craig Zobel, our director, and myself, we said, you know, does it feel like we're doing 2 endings? Do we really need Mare going in the attic? And we were like, oh, you know what? Let's just shoot it anyway. And then we will or we won't use it. And then in every cut of 7, of which there were many, in every cut of 7, it was always there, to the point that I then couldn't imagine not having it. And actually, I think it's really right, because, you know, part of the reason why I hope audiences have connected with Mare in the way that they have is that so many of us have been touched by grief and tragedy in our lives, myself included. And there is a universally shared, complicated set of emotions that come hand in hand with what it feels like to be someone who's left behind, grieving that loss. And you can't start confronting grief until the time is right. And that time might come right away, or it could come 2 years later, 10 years later, for some people, 25 years. It's just a matter of time. And so in that moment, Mare going up into the attic, all I could hope was that people would come with her in a way. You know, that's for me what that moment is. And I think it is the beginning of her facing what she hasn't been able to face, and maybe opening the doors to whatever ugly feelings come out of confronting that moment. And of course, that's the most terrifying thing about grief, is that when you stare it in the face, you just have no idea what it's going to do to you.
Yeah, that was, oh my gosh, you've just given me goosebumps talking about that. But also talking about, you know, Laurie and Mare, you know, how do you think, and talking about healing, how do you think their relationship will begin to heal from this? Like, how did you imagine that go moving forward?
I think, you know, it's funny, I've not really been asked that, but I suppose if I dig around in my subconscious and come up with really what I feel, I think Mare would do a huge amount of getting the community to rally around her. I think Mare would do what she's always done in many ways, which is to facilitate support networks for people who she feels need it, or who she can see are in, you know, are in some kind of a desperate state. Or for example, like Freddie Hanlon, she knew in episode 1 he didn't need to be sent to prison, he needed to go to a shelter. He had no heat, he had no food, he's starving, he's an addict. She has compassion and humility always. And I think that she would have made it her priority to somehow check in on Laurie every day, whether it was her directly doing that or finding other members of the community to do it, like Patty Del Rasso, Dawn, you know, these friends, these long friendships. They all went to high school together. So I like to think that as a community, people would have really stepped in, kind of sort of crafted somewhat by Mare. But ultimately, I guess what I really feel with Laurie is that I think she would give it a year or so and then maybe move away or something. You know, I think it would just all be too present for her to be around those people. And I'm sure for Laurie to see happy, intact families, not that anyone necessarily in Mare of Easttown had a happy, intact family existence, but you know, we get custody of Drew. You know, Mare's life is somewhat lighter at the end of 7, and Laurie's is not. And one thing that I did feel very strongly about actually is that Mare's relationship with Richard was not wrapped up, you know, so that you feel it's like an adult messy relationship. You know, it's complicated. They're, you know, they're middle-aged, they're clunky, they're like a little out of practice, you know, and I think we could not have left Mare with a definitive, you know, gorgeous boyfriend, because it would not have put Mare and Laurie in an equal place when they fall together on the kitchen floor. If the audience knows that Mare's got a boyfriend she can go and FaceTime that evening, it's kind of no good. So we did actually take care of a few things around. There was a little scene that was cut, and it wasn't another scene with Richard in person, but it was like a fun FaceTime chat between the two of them when he actually gets to Bates College where he's going, and he does give her the call, and there seems to be a connection that's going to continue. And I felt that we needed to leave it a lot more ambiguous than that, and I'm really glad that we did. But I do think Mare and Laurie's relationship, whilst they love each other very much, I think it is forever altered. I do feel, sadly, I do feel that. I do.
Yeah. Gosh, that was a beautiful friendship and moment. Okay, so this is another audience question. Did this show expose you to any part of American culture that you didn't know about before? We're Brits, Kate. We can do this.
Okay. Let me think. I mean, I didn't really know about cheesesteaks. I got to be honest. I'd never had Philly cheesesteak in my life, and I'd never had a Philly pretzel either. Many New York pretzels, never a Philly pretzel. And let me tell you, there is a difference. And I do prefer the Philly pretzel, because the New York pretzel is a little too salty, I have to be honest. So that was something new. What else? I don't know. I mean, I did live in New York for a long time, so I'm fairly familiar, you know, with a lot of American kind of, you know, fads and rhythms and rituals and foods. I think one thing that really did strike me about being in Philly, and certainly in Delaware County, is the really striking class divide. So you could be in a beautiful neighborhood with beautiful homes, and then less than half a mile down the street, there are people with addiction issues and, you know, on benefits and struggling to just get through the day. And I found that really quite striking, because although of course that exists everywhere in the world and in any major city, I really did notice it in Philadelphia. Yeah, that was a real eye-opener for me, actually, I have to say.
Love that. Okay, and last audience question. What was the most challenging trait Mare has for you?
What was the most challenging trait?
Yeah.
The most challenging trait for me, I think, to be honest, it's I'm like admitting something now. I think her most challenging trait is probably like when Mare decides that she is going to do something, she's going to do it. She's like, nothing, no one is going to stop her. Now, this is a real admission. That is exactly like me. So this was one thing that she and I genuinely had in common. And it was very challenging for me, because I had no instinct for whether I was going too far in that direction or not, because I would just do that anyway as well myself. So I was like, somebody help me. But like, there's a scene with when Laurie says to Mare at the beginning of episode 3, at the beginning of episode 3, she says, you know, Jess Riley came over to the house and said that she thinks maybe the DJ's father is Frank Sheehan. And Mare's like, I'm gonna go and find out. She puts down a beer, she gets up, she goes, don't try and stop me, please. I added that on that one take. We improvised, and Laurie's like, don't go now. We just improvised all of that. That was all added on the day. That wasn't on paper. And it's like typical of, like, it's a very typical of me thing. You know, people are like, don't, please, Kate, just Kate. Oh God. Okay, she's doing it. She's gone. You can't. My husband, I always can hear my husband saying, like, you can't stop her. There's no, just leave it. Just let her go. She's just let her go. She'll find out. Just leave her.
Oh
So,
my gosh.
yeah, that was a challenge for me because I had no radar for whether I was doing like too much or too little. Oh, it's so funny.
And you slip into the accent so easily now after doing it for so long.
Oh my gosh, really? I wish I didn't. I wish I could just like never just have to do it again. But it's still in my head. And you know, I got to tell you something really funny. My son is doing a school play right now, and it's an American piece. And I was running lines with him earlier on today, and he's supposed to be doing a Southern accent in his play. And I'm reading all the other lines, and I'm full on doing Delco. And he's like, Mum, you can't keep doing that accent because I'm now copying you, and I'm trying to do the Southern. And like, Mum, you're doing Philly. I was like, I am not doing Philly. I'm not doing a Philly accent. I'm doing the general American. He's like, Mummy, you are doing a Delco dialect. Oh, God, sorry. So I don't know how I'm going to get it out. I've got to get it out somehow because I'm sure I'm not going to be doing a Delco dialect again anytime soon. So I need to get rid of it. So funny.
Oh my gosh. Well, Kate, thank you so much for joining us today for this incredible Q&A and insight into Mare. Do you want to say something to everybody that's tuned in? And you have a global audience out there right now.
I do, actually. I am going to say with all my heart, it means so much to all of us who put this show together and who worked unbelievably hard. It means really more than words can express that you all have responded in the way that you have to the show, that you all have loved Mare in the way that you have. I can't believe it. She's like a hideous, sometimes unlovable person, but thank you for connecting with her in the way that you have. It means so much. And just thank you, huge oceans of gratitude on behalf of myself and HBO and everyone who was part of the show. Thank you. Really, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kate. Thank you, HBO, and thank you, HBO Max. And obviously to our audience for tuning in. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you,
Bye.
everybody. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.